It's a visor.
A visor, you got it right.
It's a special visor. Nobody's got this visor. I'm the only one that has a visor. Okay, just double checking.
Uh-oh. Now he's got the bee hat.
That is a look. That's like the
Bee visor, Vise bee.
That is a thing. That's like Rastafari and Rick.
Right? Yeah.
That looks
Rasta
great.
Rick.
Yeah. That's the new hip hop look.
Get a picture.
Yeah.
Make sure the Esteban's logo is showing.
MC Rick
Uh-oh,
Thompson.
look.
Oh, it's Eric Gunnels.
Eric Gunnels is here.
Just in time. Just in time.
Jamie just warned us like a minute ago.
Just in time.
We were unaware.
Right on time.
Imagine that. We got Gunnels, finally.
Everyone
Thetford
be
Township trustee.
Everyone be quiet. There's an
can't
elected
believe-
official in the room.
I cannot believe the caliber of the people
Secret
in
buddies
this room
with the former
tonight.
chief.
He's
This
the
is
only
really
person
crazy.
amongst us that other people have put their faith in to make decisions for them.
Yeah.
Can you believe that? It's crazy,
Other than,
right?
moms, right? Because a couple moms.
Pleasure to be here. Better late than never.
Oh, you're right on time, Eric. Trust me. And when you legislate, you make the rules. What do you mean? That's what it goes, right? And of course, we cannot forget the one and the only, the man who's responsible for everything.
Everything.
Just everything. You name it.
Everything at least.
Whether you like it or
All
no.
our existence. Everything.
Good, bad, and
From
otherwise.
singularity till now.
Exactly. For all eternity.
His name is Jamie Lowell. Please welcome.
It is. Thank you.
Jamie Lowell.
Very good beer. Glad to have these.
Appropriate amount of applause there.
Yeah. No, it's okay. People are just in awe. It takes a little while to get warmed up. It's okay. It's really okay. You can bring
Delayed
it on.
applause.
It's really good to have these particular guests with us today.
Yes.
Even Charlie.
It is
And-
kind of a cool little house. That
It's
we've got
been a
here.
long journey, and we've all been in it for a long time, and to have these guys with us who have also been there for a long time, it makes it a good night. Hopefully, this positive energy is brushing off onto Michael here after a hard day.
Put the banana back in your pocket. You'll
Yeah,
feel better.
Michael, stop panting. He's fine now.
He's
You
had
know,
a bad
the,
day. Now he's hanging out with all of us, man.
That's right. Much better. If you guys were with me today, it wouldn't have been a problem. So, I know Charlie mentioned, just talk about something, we can take a break, but Charlie mentioned there are many things yet left to protest about. The people in prison, they're still treating cannabis as a Schedule 1. I got a call recently about mother in fear of removal of her child for the use of cannabis with the child, CPS complaint. Still real. I still am in horror of this story we talked about when we were at Bro Green. We were talking about the driving issue of that girl who, as tragic as the accident was, it was 3 or 4 nanograms of THC.
Harshly said.
Accident,
Yes.
6 years in prison for the zero tolerance. So she had it in her system. There was an accident. It caused death. Marijuana is a Schedule 1. And only because it's Schedule 1 does that translate to a crime that's punishable, or that could...
Without scientific causality, just because of those facts.
That's right. That's right.
That law is triggered by a set of circumstances, not by logic.
Although I will say this, anyway, so there's those issues that exist, and my journey today that caused all this chitter chatter was that I was going to fight a medical marijuana case, and the lab testing of the non-plant material marijuana was reported out as could be synthetic, could be marijuana. So, nothing has changed. It's like a case from 2013. And we're relitigating all the issues. So, I mean, Charlie, there's a lot still left to be done. It is, and I'll tell you, I was in Ann Arbor a couple of weeks ago on a case. And in Ann Arbor, downtown Ann Arbor. And I watched the court proceed in sentencing and taking pleas on cases for people involving some crimes in marijuana, but all of the sentences involved no use of marijuana. No use of no one missed a beat. No one missed a beat. No law had changed. It was being talked about, discussed, precluded from use, as if nothing had changed. Now, I say that because theoretically, if someone's in court and you're under the jurisdiction of the court, and marijuana remains illegal because Prop 1 or MRPMA has not happened yet, then there's no reason the court could say logically that someone would have cannabis in their system unless they're a medical marijuana patient, right? And but they weren't doing that. The sentences were no illegal controlled substance, including marijuana. So the premise of the preclusion of someone's bond or their term on probation was conditioned upon the premise that cannabis is still Schedule 1 or still illegal.
Is that true though? I mean, really? Because
Yes, it is. Because I stood up in the court and I said, I don't know if anyone knows this in this court, but they legalized marijuana, Judge.
They legalized alcohol too. Were they allowed to use alcohol as part of their terms of their probation? I'm just playing.
I see. No, I see your point. No, that's a good point. And I was trying to not let my comments be unspecific, and I guess they were. My point was that the illegality of marijuana and the bond conditions of the probation were discussed, entered into orders in the same way that they were and have always been. You know what I mean? Under the pretext that they're
that it's
illegal. Right. Like
yeah.
that's the probation orders, the no whatever the recommendations are in the probation in the pre-sentence reports, and the way that the court was imposing the sentences and dispensing with justice. I'm telling you, it's I mean, look, it's a weird time. We're in this certain paradigm shift. There are different interpretations of what MRTMA means. I'm still, distressed with some of the interpretations being proffered by the PAM and, that's being perpetuated through the prosecutor's offices throughout the state. I think that a lot of the prosecutors have come around. They're more realistic about it. But what hasn't changed is the force by which the law enforcement community still is pursuing some of these cases, or the cases that were pending that are still in existence, that if we're pending, and instead of dismissing them, they're going forward. And the lack of courage from the state or county prosecutors for turning away these requests for warrants or requests for charges to be issued as civil infractions. It's really on them, and you can blame the police for doing what they're doing, but the way our system is set up is that to issue charges, the prosecutor must sign off on it, and then they have to go to the court, and the court has to sign off on it. The second one's a rubber stamp. The only real check and balance is an honest, integral prosecutor when they review the allegations and they see the request for what charges should be issued, and they read the allegations, and as they teach us in law school, you're issue spotting, you're reading things, your synapses are firing, these issues are popping on your head, that's a crime, that they see no crimes. So the point is there's a battling to be done. It's almost, I don't want to say it's like educational, it's like changing the minds of people, like that. I don't know any way to describe it. It's interesting because they legalized marijuana and the world hasn't ended. The sky's not falling. Children aren't eating dogs on the street. Nothing's changed. Like there's no
road conditions haven't changed.
Road conditions haven't changed. There's no but nothing's changed elsewhere either. Like I'm saying, the institutions. I'm saying the institutions have not changed.
Right.
And therein lies.
Change is slow though. You got to be patient. I mean, people resist change just instinctively.
We fear change.
Explain hemp
We
then,
do.
Jimmy.
From Wayne's
Hemp?
World.
The hemp change went.
Hemp took forever.
Are
you kidding
But
me?
the advancement to where it stands right now, the federal government granted, and we're waiting on regulations.
And we're almost there with cannabis, man.
We're almost there with I beg to differ.
I think we are.
Really? What's the federal government going to do?
Well, they've already basically said that cannabis is not Schedule 1 when they granted the right for GW Pharmaceuticals to begin distributing their medication in the United States. And it's a matter of getting through this last bullshit layer of the politics and the bureaucracy. And, just candidly, a little bit more money's probably going to have to flow.
But, Jim, isn't the comment that you made supporting the uncertainties of the federal position on marijuana? In other words, the exception that we rely upon, and I agree with your argument that if they've granted studies to be made, but it is for the pharmaceutical
Uh-huh.
and nobody else. So if this is the direction that it's going, then and that's the writing on the wall, then
That's how it starts.
the marijuana is not going to be anything that anyone wants it to be, right? I mean, if it gets scheduled to 2 or 3 federally,
It will.
it's not going to be. There's going to be more.
I think it'll probably more than likely be unscheduled. Once it goes truly recreational, I mean, once the tobacco companies really get their hooks into the industry, it'll take off, I assure you.
But do you think that the pharmaceutical companies are going to let that happen?
Yeah.
Don't you think they've got a vested interest in keeping it at 2? I mean,
Sure they do, but the thing about that is the formulations that they use are all proprietary. And, I mean, honestly, most of the medical professionals that I've talked to on this topic, and there's been many over the years, have always leaned towards the pharmaceutical model so that the dosing was more controlled. And, I mean, frankly, I think that if we want to maintain access to the plant itself, recreational is probably our best bet, because if you look at the writing on the wall, the medical form of the medication will continue to evolve into a state where it's not medicinal for everybody. And I mean, I think that all of us would attest to, for some people, smoking marijuana, like physically smoking it, is very medicinal. And I think at the end of the day, if we want to maintain that right, unfortunately, it'll have to be done through the recreational laws. But I do believe it's coming. I mean, how many states have legalized marijuana now? Like legalized it.
right, but we know what's been. You would think that now that we're over 25, with 20, 30, 29,
Yeah.
20.
For medical, but
Yeah, it's just
for
medical.
legal, we're
Right.
at
But-
like, I don't know, 10 or 12
Right.
plus DC or something like that. I really don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Yep. So we haven't hit the critical mass yet, but we will.
Listen, there are a couple things that you said. One, we're talking about the outcome of the federal issue, right? And the optimism that we can identify is that they're not treating it as Schedule 1 because they're granting some testing. They see some possibilities that may not be highly addictive and dangerous or whatever, which is ludicrous, of course. But if it goes down this path, and we're talking about non-plant material, it's very likely that this is going to. And I understand your point. You're saying, well, the federal answer is that we will be able to grow plants and smoke marijuana, right?
Yep.
But anything else is going to be controlled and dominated by the pharmaceutical companies. And more likely than not, if they catch you doing and making the end products that they are making and competing with them, I'm going to suggest that the consequences and ramifications are at a higher level than the idea of having your door kicked in and your dog shut.
Maybe.
Because we're talking about pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
They can come take you.
It depends if you're doing it for yourself or if you're distributing it, I think.
Commercial.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. They have a vested interest to shut that sort of activity down. But I think they'll have a tough time doing it if people are making it for their own personal use. I do think that it will end up ultimately destroying the caregiver system. And, I mean, unfortunately, it's just the way that it's going to evolve. And the reality of the situation is that these large organizations have a tremendous amount of power, and they, at the end of the day, respect really their bottom line. And if they see a threat to it, they'll take action to neutralize it.
It's interesting because if I were, representative advising the pharmaceutical companies, in order to understand what I'm about to say, you have to understand that in court today, in a lab report, the reporting of it was that the substance that was tested, Delta 1 THC, and the origin of that Delta 1 THC, because there's got to be something, and it was either synthetic or it was marijuana. So that is in a lab report suggesting that the laboratory tested the substance and is suggesting that the substance that they tested, which had THC in it, could have been made in a synthetic lab in the state of Michigan. So my advice to the pharmaceutical companies, they better really worry, because all throughout the state of Michigan, you have all these local people that are synthesizing THC in their basement.
Yeah.
And the competition is really high. And they better come in and start legislating all that stuff away.